Howdy ho guys, and welcome back to another Bojinjin vlog. So, this is, the reason, like, I'm a bit awkward in this intro is I'm just thinking back to last week's entry, which, like, when I watch it back, was actually one of the most kind of raw and vulnerable entries I've ever done. And I didn't really plan it that kind of strict, like, I didn't really plan it that well either, because, like, I just kind of went on a whim. It was, like, a recent realization of mine, and, as such, I just kind of went with it, and I was this, like I said, I was this close to not releasing that video, because it was just so personal, but, like, but now that it's out, you know, I suppose it's funny how that works, isn't it? Like, the video that, like, you do it and you're like, oh god, like, should I release this into the public? Into the slipstream, as it were, and, like, you get over it, and, like, you then look at it with, like, in an entirely different light. You're like, wow, that was one of the most kind of, like, valuable entries I could have done, you know. But anyway, so you know, no pressure, you know, that entry was like I said, probably one of my most raw and vulnerable entries up to date, right? So yeah, to follow that up, no pressure at all. Anyway, so I've got a few entries lined up in the next few weeks. Just mostly, like, they're like recap entries slash, you know, updating. So as of, you know, today and for the following weeks, like, no kind of major, you know, like, no kind of major, like, revelations or anything like that, unless, or rather, like, it's gonna have to be after these next few entries that that happens. But, like, in this very first entry, I wanted to expand on an entry I did in the past, like, month or two, or rather a series of entries where I talked about vibration, right? And there was also an entry that I did that, like, unfortunately, I accidentally deleted because I wasn't sure if I wanted to use it. That I could also, I suppose, talk a bit about in this entry as well, right? And that was an entry I wanted to do about prana, which is actually related to this topic of vibration. And I'm also going to try and keep these entries, as short as possible, because, you know, I'm kind of, like, real life stuff, right? But, like, yeah, so anyway, and also, you know, entries that are long are great when they're full of value, like last week's, but, like, they're also a bit long, you know, and I do recognize that whoever's watching this probably does not appreciate having to sit through, like, an hour-long entry, unless, you know, you're just watching it in the background or something. But, like, even then, you know, it's your precious time, man, and I don't want to waste it, or lady. So anyway, vibration. I wanted to give kind of an extension on what I talked about in those entries about vibration, right? More specifically, like, again, the big thing is, why should any of us care, right? Because I talk, like I stress a lot of the times, right? Like, the kind of central, aside from, like, do what you love and inspiring whoever's watching this, if I could even do that, right? But, like, you know, that's kind of what I aim for, is to inspire people to do what they love. But besides that, like, it's also kind of like exploring thoughts, you know, exploring perspectives, building your perspective, right? That's kind of one of the major aims of this channel, is to do that. And besides that, which is number one, the other one is tap into your sensitivity and to be more sensitive and to own your sensitivity. And so, like, there's a very interesting that happens in spirituality, like the field of spirituality, where many of us end up, you know, where many of us kind of end up, like, you know, having been backed into a corner by life and pain and suffering, and just, like, not knowing what to do, you know, feeling all hope is lost, right? You know, we end up in this thing of spirituality, and it then kind of launches us into this journey where we really kind of discover a lot that we would not have ordinarily discovered, right? And it's really a very special thing for each and every one of us on the spiritual journey. But like the thing is that like as you kind of explore, as you kind of explore perspectives, as you kind of build your own kind of independent thinking, right? And you start questioning all of these other things that we've been fed in terms of ideas about how life is, what happens after death, before birth, like what is ultimately the purpose of being here, all of these big things that have been, or indeed have not been, like kind of like, like kind of spoon fed to us, in school and stuff like that, from our caregivers. But like as we explore perspectives, right, it is then an emerging need for us to take what we learn through all of these downloads that we start to do, right? How to then take that and to make it a part of life. How to make it relevant to our situation. Because, don't get me wrong, like the whole kind of like download thing is fucking awesome, right? It's like when you have like the next insight, it's like, oh my God, like, holy shit, I never thought of it like that. And it's like, that's amazing, right? That's awesome. But like the thing is, like, past a certain point, particularly as you get older, if you're young, then you start like you start to like reach a new stage where you're like, okay, like I have all of these perspectives, I have all of these thoughts, but like, where is the connection between those and life, right? So this is where like becoming more sensitive, I guess, the second one, tapping to sensitivity, goes into it, right? So if you want to then understand, right, if you then want the perspective, right, coming full circle, in terms of like how to why you should tap into your sensitivity, then I'm hoping, this entry will feed into that, right? But like, so, yeah, why? Why does vibration matter, right? And it's like, it sounds like a really stupid question to be asking, particularly to the kind of audience that I'm addressing here, but like, sometimes it's like, well, and I'm sure like, the whole thing, right, another disclaimer, like, is that like, trust your own guidance. Like you could be watching a random Chinese guy, just kind of like mentally dump on you. That's okay, right? You could experience other people kind of like divulging their insights to you, but ultimately it is your prerogative in life to kind of form your own perspectives, right? And sometimes, yeah, like, when we get really high up in terms of like ideas, philosophies of life, like everyone has their own kind of unique hierarchy in terms of what they really believe in and stuff like that, right? So how you order your, the importance of principles, But having said that, right, like, why should we care about vibration? Why, like, particularly when you're in the thick of it and like you have no money and like you're just like stressed out and you have so many responsibilities and you just want to do stuff that you realize, you suddenly have this, you're awakening, you're in the midst of awakening, you're like, oh my God, I was lied to, and like, fucking like, people, like, I always believed I couldn't do what I wanted to do and that like, it was just not an option, and I had to like, just settle for like what was in front of me, like get a good job, buy a house, and all of these things, right? Even like, yeah, like become rich, right? And all these things, and like, you realize in the awakening process of like, well, is that really the case, right? And you go through that, right? But like the thing is, in the thick of things, sometimes like we honestly like even if we understand, as I'm sure whoever's watching this does, like what vibration is, why it's important to like be mindful of it and to consciously try to direct it as much as you can, right? Whilst also, as I described like in that entry where I described vibration as climbing a mountain, right? And that like the thought that you can just snap your fingers and suddenly be out of triggers and be out of low vibration is thinking that you have the power of instant teleportation, right? And that you can just click your fingers and suddenly end up on the summit of the mountain. Energy is not like that. Energy is very much like a thing that you have to go through a journey, a mini journey every single time that you go through that up and down to get to where you want to be, right? But the thing is, like I mentioned, that doesn't mean that you can't build like a lift system or a pulley system that can transport you faster. And that's really what the emotional mastery journey, if you will, like, which is the other component, as I say. Really, those two are like to me the main two components of spirituality. One is basically expanding your thoughts, which is what building a perspective is all about. The second one is understanding your like visceral subjective experience, and that's what tapping into your sensitivity is all about. It's like really like delving into what it means to feel and how you can use that to then like live a better life and stuff like that, and benefit yourself and other people, right? So yeah, so yeah, like, why should we do it, right? And the reason why feeling is so important, even though it does not really have a direct causal link to what happens, it is nonetheless the space from which everything in your life happens. Your vibration really dictates like the kind of things that you line up with in life, right? And like, I'm sure, like, I'm definitely not the first person to say this. Many spiritual teachers talk about this, right? How like vibration is the thing that law of attraction, right? Essentially, law of attraction responds to vibration. It responds to other things as well, like, like your vibration is one thing, but then like whether or not you engage with like life itself, right? And there's an interesting example that like is again, I'm showing my nerd side here, but like I mentioned Danganronpa, which is a game, visual novel game, and in one of the entries in that series, like there's a theme of like the whole thing in that series is hope versus despair, right? Which is like essentially it is high vibration or low vibration, right? It is like consciousness and unconsciousness, right? That's the kind of main theme of that series as a whole, and it's awesome, right? But like in the subsequent entry in the series, they then tackle a new dimension of this, which is like, okay, so you understand that there is hope, or like consciousness, high consciousness, or high vibration, and then that there is also low despair, or like chaos and like the darker side of human nature and stuff like that, right? You understand this. Everyone eventually gets to a point where they understand this, right? But then once you understand those things, what are you then going to do about it? And this is where we get into like the topic of the topic of energetic expansion or energetic constriction, right? How do you then integrate this, right? This is the important thing, because like when we build understanding on things, it's all cerebral, it's all like intellectual, it's all like mental, right? And so they're just ideas, right? But when you actually like live life, you go through the ups and downs, and like based on your understanding of like the kind of never-ending kind of cycle between hope and despair, if you will, you still have to decide then how you're going to live your life based on what you know, right? And so like so going back to what I was saying, vibration is the space from which everything unfolds, right? Like I said, there's no direct link per se. People like, even though people kind of understand what you're saying, like I'm talking about like left brain dominant people, right? They kind of understand what you're saying when in terms of like, you got to aim for happiness. You got to make sure that like you're feeling optimistic and positive, because it will impact your life. People do understand this, but like from a scientific perspective, it's like, what proof is there that emotions actually, affect your life in any meaningful and consistent way, right? And there are millions of studies about this, right? There are people who know, who intuitively understand that like emotions play a huge part, and moreover, like vibration, like the way that you connect to feeling, and the consciousness that you hold over that, how well you can connect to it, basically, will determine the quality of your life, right? Many people understand this, and like many people kind of launch into studies and experiments, and scientific pursuits to prove this, right? But like, as of yet, like, it's not the same as like proving that, like, if you, I always use the example, like when you add, hydrochloric acid to like potassium hydroxide, it becomes potassium chloride, a salt, and water, right? It's not the same thing. You can't say like, you can't like give that rigorous of a proof to it, because it will never be like, because like how you feel is pre-manifested. You can tell how, you can kind of guesstimate, if you will, how someone feels from an objective point of view, based on like, their facial expressions, like their kind of quality, their tone of voice, and all these things. But like this whole like thing of like emotions and feelings, like it's very difficult to kind of treat with any serious scientific kind of rigor, right? So, or academic rigor indeed, but and it's the same with like spirituality. You reach a point where you're like, okay, like it's cool to understand that oneness is a dimension within our reality, aka like behind, you could say, all of like the kind of drama that unfolds in this dense physical reality, and indeed all of like the kind of like, dimensions above that, where you go into like life paths and things like that, right? You ultimately you're like, ultimately it's like, well, but okay, it's cool to understand all that stuff, but like, what is actually going to do for my life, right? And like, I have been in that kind of scenario, and that's what I'm kind of referring to in terms of like, when you're in the thick of things, it's like, why should we care? But the reason we should care is because vibration is, after all, the space from which everything else unfolds in your life. As I've mentioned in previous entries, and as I'm sure you know, right? Sometimes life just happens. That's why I coined that concept of energetic axes, or the axes of perception, right? It's because like, even if you have the best of intentions, even if like you maintain consciousness and connection over like vibration, over the way that you feel, even then shit happens to you, right? So like, and as such, it's like, it's tempting to be like, okay, what, like, like, why should I even care, right? From like an existential perspective, right? But the thing is that, like, yes, a proportion of life, a part of life, is managing stuff. You got to manage your bank account, regardless of how you feel, because if you run out of money, like, that's going to present a problem to you. You got to manage your relationships. You got to manage the expectations that you bring to that relationship. Otherwise, like, people kind of overstep your boundaries without realizing it, or they think that you're not going to do anything about it. You've got to manage like your image, right? Like, if you're doing something like this, or like what I'm doing, like, you can't just say anything, right? Even if you say things that are a bit weird and out there, like, you have to kind of bring it back and make it relatable. Otherwise, like, it's going to weird people out. It's a skill of communication, right? So like, that's another thing that you have to manage. You have to manage your knowledge. You have to keep learning new things. So like, there are things in life that are very pragmatic that we all have to deal with, right? And we get better at them the more that we deal with them, right? But the thing is, past all of that, like, what you ultimately do with your time, once you've sorted out the financial situation, so that you're not in the red, like some of us are, right? And once you've sorted out your health, so that you're not like feeling crappy all the time, and you actually know that like you need to exercise and you need to eat well most of the time to maintain your health. Once all of this is done, like, you still have, like, the rest of what happens in your life is still gonna be dictated by your vibration, by like the way that you meet with life in a feeling way, right? And like, the thing, this is another thing though, is that like, life can be entirely like just a random set of variables that you're trying your utmost to fucking lock down, because if even one tiny thing fucking fails in your life, then everything goes to shit, right? So you're just like, oh fuck, I have to keep on top of everything all the fucking time. You know, you can live like that. But the thing is, what tends to be the case, and what, you know, again, it's not always the case, but what tends to be the case when you're just in that kind of a modality where you're just like, oh, I need to control everything, like, you know, oh shit, like, I want to do what I want to do, but then, like, I have to care about these people, and I have to, like, make sure that I don't, that, like, my bicycle tires don't pop randomly, so I have to, like, do the research on that, and, like, then, like, what if someone hacks my YouTube account and delete all of my content? What if people steal my stuff? Oh, I gotta think about copyright law. I gotta think about this. I gotta think about that. And it's like, yeah, that's life, right? But the thing is that what most people don't realize, you know, the people who are like, okay, whatever, Mr. Vibration Guru man, you know, you do your hippie shit over there, and I'll be making money and hustling over here, right? You know, what those kind of people don't understand initially is that, like, the vibration that you're put in when you're in that kind of, like, fearful, vigilance, dense, you know, kind of, like, focus way, is one that is not going to lead to any real fulfillment in your life. You could argue this, you know, there are some people who, like, hustle and they make $1 billion whatever, right? And then and then after clearing that shit up, they then discover, like, their spirituality, you know, they discover joy, they discover art, right? But honestly, how many people is that in, like, the world of, like, almost 8 billion people now, I'm sure, right? How many people is that, right? It's not very many people. Most people, like, they know, like, they gotta grind and they gotta work hard, but it's like, yeah, and they gotta look after their family, and they gotta, like, fucking be accountable, and they gotta vote when it's election time, you know. It's like, most people like that, like, they don't realize that, like, when they're in that state, the thing that's running them, even though, like, they're doing what's logically correct. What's logically correct is you have a bunch of random ass fucking factors that change constantly, and if any one of them changes even, like, a small degree, it kind of fucks everything else up, right? You know, because life is integrated, right? That's another concept that I presented, right? It's like this idea that life is like, it seems sometimes, like, or rather, like, in modern society, the way that things are marketed to us, and also, like, the way that, like, people, like, just several societal kind of values and things of that nature, like, kind of dictate that, like, you have an area in your life called money, then you have another area in your life called relationships, then you have another area in life called recreation, and it's all compartmentalized. But, like, really, you know, whether you're dreaming or astral traveling or, like, doing your taxes or, like, riding your bike through, like, you know, a marsh, which is kind of fun. Not a marsh, but, like, you know, on the side of the marsh, or whatever you're doing. Whether you're composing a piece of music, or you're playing video games, or you're out at the pub with your mates, or you're crunching numbers at, you know, at your cubicle at your job. It's all connected at the end of the day. Everything feeds into each other, right? Which is why you've got to be mindful of what you're focusing on. Because, like, unfortunately, when you're overly focused on details and, like, trying to control everything, and you're like, fuck that vibration shit, who gives a shit about that? I don't have time for that shit. It's like, when you're unconscious to this component of life, then you're losing yourself to the chaos of life. You're losing yourself to the chaos of life. Right? Because to you, life is this thing that happens, and you want to do what you want, but then you don't have time, and then you're like, oh fuck, like, and you start blaming people, and it's like, and you start blaming yourself for blaming other people, and it's just so dense. And again, I'm not saying that's wrong, or that like, or that there's really anything we can do to fully excise that part of life, you know? Maybe I kind of wish that we didn't have to deal with this shit, right? But the thing is that what we are not realizing when we're in that state is that our vibration is not where we want it to be, basically. We don't even know what's happening in terms of vibration. We're in low vibration, I suppose, right? We're in low vibration. By default. Again, there are probably examples against this, right? But like, generally speaking, most people in one society working a job, having to support a family, trying to just like get by and not be the victim of like scams and shit like that, you know, and be taken advantage of. It's like, for most people like that, like, they're in low vibration. They don't realize that like there's a thing within us, and that is our energetic focus, that kind of becomes the space from which everything else unfolds. Again, the trip is that like, it doesn't mean that when you understand vibration that it's going to change your life. But we have a double irony here, right? But if you understand what vibration is, it becomes a fucking immense tool for you to use, right? Because for someone like me, and I'm guessing other people who may be watching this, like, I'm a textbook, like, scatterbrained, right brain dominant kind of a guy, right? Maybe mildly autistic. Maybe I should add that to the fact that I'm like, you know, that part of me is also a closet or covert narcissist, right? Or growing up at least, right? You know, and maybe still a bit now, but like, yeah, like, I'm that kind of a person, and I'm guessing that most spiritual, artistic, creative people are, right? And it's like, you're not fucking good with details and managing shit. You know? Can I fucking manage other people? I can't even fucking manage myself half the time, you know? I have to like kind of wing it most of the time. But like, the thing is, like, for someone like me, and perhaps you, to understand that there is something that you can control, even though you can't control every little thing that happens to you, because you could be fucking enlightened, but someone could still call you a name. They could call you like an idiot, and that's still gonna hurt you. Right? But, and like, you'll plan shit, and you're just like, you're like, I'm gonna do all of my fucking things today. I'm gonna do like fucking 10 videos today, and you only end up doing 5, and you're like, fuck! I knew, I had it. Where the fuck did I go? And it's like, that shit's still gonna happen, but like, the thing is that when you understand that, okay, like, if I just breathe it in and release control over these things, because, fuck, I don't know, maybe I just can't control these things. Maybe I just can't. What do you want me to say? But, like, if I know, right, that, like, all I need to do is focus on being healthy, being happy, and trying my best to be optimistic, whilst also being open to, like, okay, if things knock me down, they knock me down. I'm just gonna feel shit. I'm gonna skulk. I'm gonna doubt myself. I'm gonna be angry. Like, I'm gonna feel like crying. You know, I'm gonna feel like a little insignificant worm. You know, that's just gonna happen. And when it does, I just breathe it in. It's like, well, oh, I don't feel great again. Damn it. You know, and you connect with that. Eventually you're like, well, despite the fact that I almost ran out of money last week, and that so-and-so texted me with some shit that just brought me down, or wasn't really that important, you know, I'm like, why the fuck are you... I'm trying to focus here. And then, like, when you were out shopping, like, some kid, like, fucking, you know, called you a chink, you know, and it's just like, yeah. Even though that shit happened, I'm still like, okay. But I'm with my feelings. That's what I've been trying to do, and I'm with them. And even though shit isn't perfect, maybe I feel alright. And maybe I still have hope for the future. You know? And maybe the next time that shit happens, maybe I'll be a little bit more optimistic. Maybe I'll be a little bit more open-minded. Maybe I'll have a bit more like energetic reserve, which will allow me in those situations, even though vibration or emotion doesn't really have any scientifically verifiable or like observable kind of effect on what happens in the outside world. Nonetheless, because you understand and you breathe it and you try your best to maintain it, it gives you that little bit extra in reserve so that the next time that shit happens, you won't freak out. You won't eat 10 million calories in a month. You know, you won't go off on someone. You won't think that they're the scourge of the earth. Maybe you'll be like, okay, maybe I'll just take it a bit easy. Or maybe this person, bless them, is just having a bad day. Maybe they just want to be like, you know, have like a family environment, but their parents just leave them outside in the streets to just play. When all they really want is to have like a nice family environment where, like, you know, they can be with the parents and talk to the parents, but their parents don't really seem to care. I mean, that's kind of controversial, like I said, but maybe that's unfortunately something that's happening with a lot of these, particularly where I live, you know, a lot of kids in the streets and things like that, you know. Maybe like the next time you have a setback where you wanted to do 10 videos in a day and you only did 5, you're like, okay, what, but like I suppose that I can do them tomorrow. And I can weirdly still maintain my optimism. Doesn't mean that I didn't feel pessimistic at any point. But now that I understand, and now that I connect with how I feel, and really just the way that my breath, what I think of myself, and I really connect with that, and am honest, but not so honest that I become dishonest. All right, you know, you want to believe when you're in low vibration, you tend to want to cling on to things, right? Whether it's good or bad. You know, whether it's happiness or anger, you try to cling to everything, right? You don't just let it be. You know, but when you understand vibration, when you try your best to be conscious with vibration, it serves as a space for you to do that little thing, that little tweak that maybe makes things better next time. That little tweak that makes you look back and be like, oh shit, like, this shit used to devastate me, or at least put me in a really, really like kind of like I can't be arsed mood. But weirdly, I feel alright. Oh, this person's calling me now? Oh, cool, like, what's up, guy? Usually, like, before, like, I hate people interrupting me and I would feel like my boundaries are about to be violated when someone, like, tries to, like, you know, talk to me about something, right? But I'll give you the time of the day because I know, like, I know my boundaries, you know, sorry, but like, okay, thanks for telling me that, but like, now I'm going to go back to what I'm doing, you know, hope you have a great day, you know. At least I can give you open energy, right? I'm not going to like make you feel like this person doesn't want to talk to me, right? You see? That's why vibration is important. It's not the only thing. I'm not going to sit here and be like, fuck everything. Vibration is the space where everything happens. So you don't have to fucking worry about anything other than the way that you feel, motherfucker. Breathe in that prana, mate. Oh shit, I was supposed to talk about prana. I might talk about it in a subsequent episode, but like, or entry, but like, yeah. Because I'm going to end this one soon. But like, yeah. No. You still got to learn to manage shit. You still got to learn to like deal with like fucking bullshit like administration and shit that doesn't work properly. Like, I'm looking at you, technology. You know, you're trying to do shit and like shit's going wrong and you don't know why, and you spend a whole day trying to figure out why, and you know, you still have to deal with that shit, and you still have to learn to be effective in managing that shit. But alongside of that, you have an asset that hardly anyone in normal society, but everyone in the secret society of spiritual people, all right, breathing that prana, man. We're all one. Like, we all seem to understand, but they don't. It's like, you've got to be at least conscious over how you feel, and the way that you're kind of like interacting with like things that happen to you. You know, things that you focus on, things that meet you, right? Because that is the place from which like the rest of your life will spawn. It's a factor, right? So that's why. So hopefully, that's like just like a nice little kind of extension on this idea of vibration. You know, vibration. What is it? You know, it's just a word. Honestly, like, feelings are so like crazy and vast. You know, it's not like this is a smartphone. It's like feelings. You know, we say anger, we say like high vibration, but it's like, what do we even really mean? Can we even be sure that the red I'm describing is the same red that you're describing? We don't fucking know, right? So like, but like, and so like, that is why we each have a responsibility. Or I don't really want to put it like that even. We all have it is our prerogative, our privilege, to act as our own kind of energetic listening post, our own kind of energetic guardian, right? And that, my friends, is the message I had for the century. So I hope it was insightful, as usual. Yeah, so cool. Next week I will talk about something that is also related. I'm going to talk about pain. Right? Why the fuck do I talk about pain all the time? Am I some kind of emo? Yes. You know, so cool. Look forward to that. If you have any comments, any thoughts, feel free to leave them en bas. I think that's right. En bas is French for downstairs, right? En haut is upstairs, right? And then dessus, I think it's inside, and dessous is outside. Unless I'm completely forgetting my GCSE French. I'm kidding. I studied more French than that. Yeah, which is why I've forgotten all of it. But yeah, so yeah, feel free to leave any thoughts. I hope you guys are having a great time as usual. I hope you guys are partying hard. I hope you guys are moving continually towards your dreams and what you love. And yeah, and championing your truth. So cool. Until next week, guys, have a great week. And I will catch you in the next entry of this Bojinjin vlog. Have a good one, guys. Peace out.